Every successful manufacturer has a car that defines it, one that encompasses its philosophy and illustrates exactly what its cars should be. Mercedes-Benz has the W123, Volkswagen has the Mark I Golf, and Jaguar the XJ6. BMW has this, the E30. From the mid-1960s onwards, BMW could almost do no wrong. They created a brand that transcended culture, promoting an ideology of engineering excellence. And in that respect, the E30 was just following the precedent of its father, the E21, but it sparked a certain something and existed at just the right time to make itself the seminal BMW. When anybody describes what BMW stands for, they always come back to the E30. Remember a few years ago when the M2 was launched, all of the reviews compared it back to this little car. So today on Twin Camp, we're going to explore the history of the E30 and evaluate why this near 40-year-old saloon car commands such serious respect. The E30 was the second generation of 3 series that replaced the E21 in November 1982, reaching British shores the following year. The E30 expanded the appeal of the baby bimmer from the 2-door only body style of the old car to the eventual plethora of styles available for the E30. There were 2- and 4-door saloons, a 2-door convertible, and eventually the 5-door estate, or touring as BMW would prefer. And as we know, estate cars are always the best choice. I'd argue that this expansion was partially responsible for the success of the E30 as it allowed a small family to switch to BMW. And they found this themselves in market research, with many European families preferring the practicality of 4 doors over the prestige of the badge on the front. This particular car is a 1989 BMW 318i SE 2-door saloon. This was the first body style launched, and the E30 received 2 revisions through its 12-year production run in order to keep it fresh. The first in 1985 and then a more substantial facelift in 1987, affecting the bumpers and rear lamps in particular. So this car is a later one. Let's have a look at the options from when this car was ordered back in 1989. Starting with the engines and below the very cool forward hinging bonnet is the M40 1.8 litre 4-cylinder engine, producing 115 brake horsepower at 5,500 RPM and 122 pound-feet of torque at 4,250. It has a single overhead cam, 8 valves and of course fuel injection, as signified by the I on the end of the 318. The E30 range was bookended by the early carburetor-fed 316, producing 90 brake horsepower from its 1.8 litre M10 4-pot, and the late 325i with its sonorous 6-pot M20, producing 170 brake horsepower. There is one key omission here, and that's the iconic M3 homologation special race car in its ultimate sport evolution flavour, with its 2.5 litre 16-valve S14 4-banger producing a massive 235 brake horsepower at a slightly ludicrous 7,000 RPM. This manual 318i only weighs 1,090 kilograms, allowing a 0 to 60 time of about 10.8 seconds through its 5-speed Getrag gearbox. There was also a ZF 4-speed automatic available, but for a car of this size and poise, the 3-pedal setup will always win out. Despite its now legendary reputation as a driver's car and as a racing car, the E30's design was, as with all these things, a compromise. It's a tiny little car by modern standards, only 4.32 metres long, 1.66 metres wide and 1.38 metres tall. To make the most out of that limited space, the suspension is McPherson struts with an anti-roll bar at the front and semi-trailing arms at the rear on coil springs. Compared to the E21, this made the handling much more neutral and predictable, though the trailing arms do naturally encourage tail-happy antics when they're pushed hard. Keeping that suspension glued to the tarmac are 195/65 tyres, wrapping around some very smart 14-inch bottle-top alloys. Making it stop are discs at the front and drums at the back, though there were some additions available to enhance the E30's rear drive capabilities, such as rear discs, anti-lock brakes, a rear anti-roll bar, a limited slip differential and larger 15-inch alloys to reduce compliance. Those 14-inch bottle top alloys look in perfect proportion to the rest of the restrained bodywork. The E30 wasn't a revolution in styling, and as previous BMWs had gotten it so right, there was no need to mess. In honing that style and chiselling away for a few more years, Klaus Luther's team came up with a shape that personified BMW's sporting purposefulness that built and maintained the brand for so many years. The part of the car that emphasises the sporting purposefulness the most is the pointed bonnet, very gentle shark nose front end, subtle kidney grills and quad round headlamps. Some point out that these features were toned down slightly from the E21, and that was for better aerodynamics, as the E30 was 15% more aerodynamic than the 21. But that still only meant a drag coefficient of 0.36 for this facelifted 318i, which is rather uncompetitive. But the E30 retains character and identity in its design. The cliches about the beauty of shark noses and kidney grills are not arbitrary. The way in which the E30 and its contemporaries pulled this off is the reason BMW has the reputation for style that it does today. There's an inherent rightness to the shape as a whole, no matter the body style, and they all look equally fantastic. And not many cars can pull that off. In this case, form follows function, and that's always the best way round. Every line on this car is exquisitely placed, and there are no more of them than is absolutely necessary, just enough to create this distinct but elegant shape. And yes, this all is a bit of a dig at the current crop of BMWs. The E30 is restrained and elegant, promoting a suave and sophisticated image. That restraint, however, isn't at the expense of identity. Strip away the kidney grills and there is still no doubt that this is a BMW from every angle. Luther remarked that BMWs ought not to be swayed by fashion trends, emphasising continuity and tradition in building a lasting image of what BMW is. This 318i SE is, as already discussed, second up the engine range, but it's also second up the trim range, so though it misses out on some external niceties such as front fog lamps, though this one has them fitted, headlamp wipers, deeper sports style front and rear bumpers, 15-inch BBS alloy wheels and a small lip spoiler on the boot, it does get a fair number of luxury touches. Standard on all late E30s were electric windows, hydraulic power steering and electric door mirrors, though the SE gets the aforementioned 14-inch alloy wheels, an electric sunroof and central locking. Being the two-door saloon, it is less practical than would be ideal for a small family car. There is a huge load lip of course, but the boot is quite deep and quite long. It's just not as practical as maybe it could be. Though I'm sure you lot in the comments will complain about structural rigidity or something, but we all know estate cars are the best cars anyway. Whoever bought this car new made some brilliant little choices, including this interior colour that BMW calls natural. And it brings the entire interior of the car up in a way that a boring black or grey just doesn't. It also complements the red wine bodywork perfectly. The seats themselves are comfortable and they're quite firm as well, so they do hold you in. They're not the last word in bolstering, but they're good for the era they're from and much comfier than any modern BMW seat. Here in the driver's seat is a wonderful place to be. In the driver's gaze is the 4-spoke thin rim steering wheel connected to a rack and pinion system that on this car is power assisted. And behind them, the traditional and very clear BMW instruments. They contain your basic requirements for speed, revs, fuel levels, coolant temperature, and of course, because BMW, the fuel economy gauge that swings away in connection with your right foot. The centre stack is actually tilted towards you, giving you something of a cockpit feel in what is quite a small interior. It really does feel like a very, very small car, this, because, well, it is. It's absolutely not the 3 Series we think of today. This is much more a very small car with all the BMW things in it, rather than a decent sized family car like the modern one is. Although the controls are sensibly laid out, one slight oddity is this analogue clock, which does look a bit out of place, though on posher 3 Series this was replaced by a proper trip computer. So why is the E30 the seminal BMW? Well, as I alluded to before, every manufacturer has a car that encompasses its philosophy, and that's what the E30 did. BMW's ultimate driving machine mantra wasn't just a marketing tool, it was reality. In the 70s and 80s, BMWs were the preserve of the enthusiast, and with the E30 being the cheapest and smallest car in the range, it was the purest, most attainable, and lightest. Therefore, any image-conscious 25 to 35-year-old just had to be seen in an E30, and the pure enthusiast wasn't left behind. The E30 found a home on the circuit both in amateur and professional settings, with the homologation special M3 meeting Group A regulations and battling it out against Audi Quattros, Rover SD1s, Ford Sierras, and of course the Cosworth engine Mercedes 190s in the best era of DTM, the German touring car series. In both these examples, the E30, as well as being a great car, was in the right place at the right time. Unsurprisingly then, the E30 became an icon in its own time and was amazingly successful, selling over 2.3 million units, most of which were sold between 1983 and 1991, when most of the E30 range was supplanted by the E36. The E30, purely from a numbers perspective, was impressive in its day, especially the 325i and the dominating M3. But in the modern world, it's the combination of history, provenance, style, and just downright fun that make it the legend it is. And I feel that status is fully deserved. And on that note, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please do click like and subscribe to TwinCam as well. It really does make a difference. And as always, I'll have more videos coming along soon.